Hello, I just wanted to do a quick introduction. Obviously, you've read the title and seen the thumbnail. Um, this is how I created my Coffin shadow box. It was somewhat of an extensive process, and so the video is a little longer. But thanks for watching, and without further ado, here's the video. So we have a lot of things put together here on the floor. The things that we're gonna need, and we're gonna start off with, we're missing a couple things, but that is fine. So one thing we have is this gigantic piece of paper that I could only find at this art store. It's huge, can't remember. Then we have a miter box with a saw, so we can cut the wood. I got this compass and protractor set. I'm really only going to be using the protractor. The piece of glass, super important. This big piece of wood is just going to be the back. And then we have a long, thin piece of wood that's going underneath this box. And then we have a thicker piece of wood that is coming on the back. First thing, the glass is the most important thing. I have it on the floor because what better place for glass to be than as close to the earth as possible. This piece of glass is 458 millimeters by 915 millimeters, 18 inches by 36 inches. And then the thickness, I don't really know if that's important to anybody, but that's the thickness on there, 332s, which is 2.5 millimeters. We gotta cut, by we I mean I, have to cut this backing or trace this onto this, because this is going to be essentially as big as this whole art piece is going to be, this whole frame, everything. So you wanna outline it like so. Once you get to this point, definitely check your corners, make sure you have 90 degrees everywhere. Because if you're off right here, it's done. Everything else that you do inside of this is going to be off. When you go to cut the glass, that's going to be off. When you cut your piece of paper out, that's going to be, I mean, it's a piece of paper, but this stuff and the glass, that's not, you don't want to make errors on those because they kind of get expensive. So probably do it with a different, I used a pencil. I used the most difficult thing to see on this color. You definitely can use like a white paint marker if you have one or something like that. I would advise that over this. Now we're gonna draw our design in here because I need to get angles of it so that I can eventually cut that thin board to the angles. It's gonna be a coffin. Ignore this smudge mark and that one over there. I didn't really like the original lines as far as to it was at first, but basically once you have your outside perimeter done, you're able to know the measurements, and therefore you can get exact angle, well, not angles, but you can get exact shapes out of what you're trying to make. For example, this portion here, I think it's 8 inches apart, and that over there is only 6 inches. And then this is a foot long, that is 2 feet long. So let me actually measure. Whoopsies, I mean, it's 10 inches here, and that thing over there, that end over there is 8 inches. So yeah, we have the outside part done, and so now it's time to get this thin piece of wood, this one here, so that we can make the perimeter. Okay, so it's at this point right now. I just cut all the pieces straight across, so now I just got to figure out the angles. So I'll have to cut something like, angles here, and so it comes in, and opposite, well, same concept here, angle there, and an angle here, and and believe if I can get this corner, this one, and this one done, I'll just flip it over and do the same thing for the other ones. That way I'm not running the risk of cutting or making incorrect angles, and then therefore this side like lining up really well and that side being terrible or something like that. Just a quick note, if you're doing this with a handsaw, if I was to be making this piece to sell it, I definitely would be cutting these angles with a miter saw. I'm just using a handsaw and a miter box. You can get really close and, you know, pretty clean lines as long as you make your angles right. But they're not the same as like a machine. And also you kind of want a saw with fine teeth. My saw kind of has pretty jagged teeth. So those are the two things. I'm not the most worried about this because I kind of like the very flush, extremely flush look. And so I'm going to mix some wood glue and some sawdust, and that will be going in between the gaps after it gets nailed together, and well, before it gets nailed together. And then once I sand it, it'll be all flush, and I want it to look like one piece, even though the wood is going to be kind of different colors. But the exterior should be this brown, so it should fade in all the way around. Okay, so once you have everything cut, what I'm doing is I'm going to apply the mixture of the glue on the corners, but I'm also using this nail gun. It also shoots staples. I'm going to be putting in these tiny nails in there. They're really small. And I'm just gonna do 2 to 3 going up and down on each corner, just to kind of make sure it's really held together really well. One other thing you can do is, I'm using kind of thicker wood, and so you essentially could just glue it all and then shove nails through the back of this going up, and that would probably hold it, but I'm just trying to make sure everything's extra sturdy. So that's the reason as to why I'm going down this route. But yeah, so that's the gun that I'm using. One keynote here is don't press too hard on that gun all the way in, because if you push it all the way in there against there and you pull the trigger, the hammer will make an indentation in the wood. So you just kind of want to be like a millimeter off, basically, like, I don't know if you can see, but you want to come almost all the way down, but where it's not actually like touching. That way it just actually engages and it shoots the nail, but it also doesn't leave a mark on your wood. I'm not going to be painting this. I actually like the color of the wood, and so I really am trying to not have nicks or anything like that. Okay, so I have it all put together now, sanded, all the corners are good. I want them to be. We're going to be using this piece, which goes all the way down there, and this is actually going to be the piece that's going to go on top. And actually, I just thought about something. I thought I wasn't going to be able to see the top parts of this, but you are actually going to be able to see the top parts of this, because this is going to be like a door. So I actually have to go finish the very tops of that. I sanded it as best as I could, but I didn't. The bottom is just all flush, but it's not exactly like detailed perfect, because this piece is going to get nailed back there. So, and then it's also going to get glued. So you won't be able to really see anything in there. But like this over here, I need to make all of them, all the corners like that. These pieces I had to cut, I reduced on the ends by a total of 1/2 centimeter, so that they can come forward and they're not necessarily, you know, they're lining up around like that. They're not like this, but they can go in up a little bit. So now I just have to assemble all of them together and then make a separate piece similar to this one, but it's going to be this wide one right here. And I'm still trying to determine what I'm gonna do on the bottom part of this, because I do need to get the glass to sit on this. I didn't put all the cutting and everything in video because I had to kind of get creative. I wasn't 100% sure on not necessarily the angles and everything like that, but it was more so the cuts. That's kind of been the most difficult part of all this. I first started out with a miter box, and then that was pretty difficult. I could only make certain cuts because like the miter box will get you like, it would get you, you know, your 45-degree angles, your 90-degree angles, but angles like that right over here, like you're not gonna get that with a miter box. That, and I had to be extremely careful with making these cuts and everything so they would just like still line up. So yeah, I'm making progress now. So the one thing I have to do is I'm going to, because I can't put nails on this like I did on the edges of these pieces aren't going to really be seen. And so I can't put nails in there. So what I have to do is I have to drill holes in here. And I've got these, I went to the hardware store and got these as I previously mentioned. And so I'm going to be cutting these, and these are just going to become dowel pins that are going to go into the, they're going to go into here, into each, I'm only going to make 2 holes. So one there and then one here. And then on the opposite side, it's going to go one there and one here. And then those pieces will come together. And then I'll put obviously glue so that they stay. I'm going to need some drill bits, some tape, and then a wooden rod, which I'm going to turn into small dowels, and then a drill. So you're gonna need to get a drill bit that's pretty much the same size as the wooden dowel. You kind of want these to go in there pretty snug. You don't want them to be loose in there. And then the reason for the tape is going to be a marker on the drill bit. So you only want this drill bit to go in a certain depth into each side of the wood. One, because that's how long these rods are going to be. You're going to make sure that they're only as long as this is going to penetrate this way and penetrate that way. And so you want the same type of depth in both rods on every segment. But also some of these have pretty bad angles, and so if you are, let's pretend you don't have that other piece and you need to come this way and you don't have it marked to how deep you should go, you can technically puncture through if you just keep going. So same thing if you're going that way. So that's the reason for the tape, is to just kind of make a marker. That way each hole that's drilled into the pieces of wood is exactly the same depth. And so I won't have problems with these, but also I won't puncture through that. And then once the holes are drilled and the dowels are ready to be put in, it'll just be a matter of gluing these pieces together. And then that should take care of the frame for what's going to retain the glass. So I had to give in, and I went and got a router. The router was like $25 or something, and then the bits were like $8. I just got the cheapest one I could get because there was just no way I was going to be able to do this by hand. So I could have, but it was just going to take forever. So I just need to clean these up a little bit, but otherwise they're all done. And once I sand them and everything like that, they should be ready for the glass. But first, I need to drill the holes on the edges, like in here, so that I can get the wooden dowels made and get it all glued together, and then I can have the frame for the glass done. So the drill bit has been taped to be half the distance of what the dowel pin will end up being. I have all the dowel pins now cut. It's just a matter of sanding the edges so that they're clean, because they got kind of some little pieces sticking out. And then that's marked. And so one thing I always use is a punch before you start out the holes. The reason for it is because you want that drill bit to go straight. Sometimes it can like move around. When you do this, you're essentially starting the hole. And so that is the reason for it. Basically where the V comes to a point, that is where I will be punching holes there. And that's the exact same thing on the other piece that's going to be connecting to this one, where the dowel pin will be going into. So yeah, it's pretty simple with these. You just push until it pops, and it'll make the, well, I guess that didn't pop, but still ended up making the little pinhole. I'm sanding all the glue now that everything's all put together. So like you see the corners, the glue's kind of sticking out at the top. So I'm sanding it, hoping to get it as smooth as possible. And that is basically just, nothing special. I just took this piece of wood here and I got fairly thick or rough sandpaper, and then something that's not so rough. And eventually it kind of just leaves it, you just kind of keep getting smoother and smoother, and not such rough grit on sandpaper, so you make sure you leave it smooth. The reason for the wood is so that when I make a pass on this, it's going straight and it's really only mostly taking off from up here. If I was to just use my finger, I could go like this, and then eventually I'd end up making dips in certain areas. So by keeping it this way, the block of wood keeps the sandpaper straight, therefore only taking most of the material off of the higher surfaces. So that's what I gotta do. I gotta do this to all the corners, and then that you should be good to go after that. I should be able to move to the next stage, which would be the glass. Cutting the glass in the shape of this coffin. So small setback. As I was sanding, something told me to put the finished piece on top of the smaller piece. You know, the idea is that this is gonna open up. You know, this is supposed to be the door holding the glass. However, once it's lined up, it's too big either direction. So even if I bring it in this way, it still sticks out. Like this piece still sticks out of here, like about 1/4 of an inch, you know, on both ends. So my measurements were wrong, and now that I think about it, I know why, because I measured on the outside of this piece of wood when I was reducing all of this by, I can't remember how much I ended up doing it. It might have been 1 centimeter. And so really I was not making it short enough. So I need to take off the difference of what's here, from here to here. So I need to make a cut here, and make another, and remove this here. Put new dowel pins in, seal it again. Well, put the glue again, and then sand it again. So I thought I was finally gonna be able to move on to the glass, but after a little bit of more sanding, but I guess not. At least now I found this out now instead of actually cutting the glass and everything. Okay, so I'm finally on to the step of where I'm going to be cutting this glass. So what I'm gonna do is that little inner edge here, it goes all the way around. That's what I'm gonna be measuring on the glass. So I'm gonna put the piece of glass on top of here, like so. And obviously, since it's clear, I'll be able to see through it. I will draw the inside line. And then when I go to make the scores, I will cut inside the lines that I draw. I just have to figure out how I'm going to place this glass, because I kind of want to take the most of not having to make so many cuts. So I might put it like as close to like that as possible, so that I can just make like shorter cuts. In my mind, that's kind of working out, but I don't know. I have to take this all apart. So I'm going to open it up, line it up on top, and then see what it looks like. And then I can start the scoring, hopefully. So I'll obviously probably use a marker or something to draw the lines of where I'm going to be scoring. When you get to the process of opening this up and messing with this piece of glass, I would suggest you're super careful, because when you come to these edges here, they're razor sharp. I'm not exactly 100% sure on how they cut this glass, but assuming how sharp these edges are, they're probably broken off in some way, and so you end up with extremely sharp edges. So I would definitely be super careful when you go to even handle this glass. You definitely want to wear gloves. Obviously it says to wear gloves right there. So I'll probably be throwing those on here in a second. I've gone ahead and put some towels down at the bottom. And I'm working with this as low to the floor as possible. I kind of want to make sure that when I do these breaks and everything like that, I'm not having to go too far down. But also, as I'm moving the glass around, I just feel more comfortable with it being as close to the floor as I can be. I have this ruler. I was originally thinking that I was going to get a marker and make the lines of where I was going to score. However, I'm not going to be making all the score marks at once. I feel if I did that, when I go to break them, it could possibly cause the break to take off and go into the centerpiece. I mean, if it came this way, that would be fine, but I don't want to run the risk of it going that way. I've also set the piece of glass to where I feel I'll have to make the least amount of cuts, at least the least longest cuts. Again, I feel that if the break has a bigger space to travel, it's more likely to take off into the center. So I definitely don't want that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start off with a small piece. I'll first go ahead and score it there. And then, I gotta go grab my scoring tool. And then once I do that, hopefully that gives me the confidence to do the other ones without hesitation. So that'll be the first step that I take. I'm going to be scoring inside as much of this, the routed line. I'm gonna try to just kind of go like a millimeter inside that line. That way it just kind of sits in there. I have decided that I'm going to be siliconing this piece of glass onto this or some sort of adhesive so that it just is permanent. I know people that make pictures, they don't really do that. Maybe it's so that they can replace the glass easily. This piece is kind of heavy. So once it's hung up on the wall, if it falls more than, I have made it fairly sturdy, but I still feel that more than just the piece of glass is going to break. I feel that, you know, I mean, if you look at it, the bottom end is smaller than the top end, meaning more weight is gonna be up here. So when it comes down, it's going to fall apart. It's not just going to be the glass that cracks. So I'll be putting that piece of glass to be there permanently. I cut the piece of glass last night and I didn't record it because I wasn't 100% sure and confident on it. One of the pieces that I tried to cut before did break because I just didn't put enough pressure on one of the score marks that I made. So I had to start all over. This one, I knew this long cut right here was going to give me problems, and it did. For whatever reason, the cut went like somewhat into this, and so it wasn't too much, but it was enough that it wouldn't let the piece of glass sit. So then when you make another score mark and you're having to chip off like tiny pieces off, it's super hard to get this to be all clean and everything. So luckily none of it cracked this way, and it doesn't even matter because I'm going to end up siliconing all of this, so you won't even see all that. I'm just trying to determine what color of silicone I'm going to end up going with, brown or black. But once all this is siliconed in place, you will only see the wood from the bottom, and then all this would technically end up being flush. I'm going to tape off the ends here on both ends, and I'll show that when I get there. But that way I can have smooth silicone this way, smooth silicone just on the piece that's on the inside there, and none of it comes into the actual glass this way, where you're no longer seeing the flush line of the wood here. but this is going to be the back part of the door, so this is actually going to be flipped the other way around. But because I didn't get the chance to show you how I cut the glass, I'm going to do it on these scrap pieces that I ended up with, left over from that big piece. And so let me just kind of show you what I did here. So let's take like this piece here. Oh, I have these pliers. I did get these pliers because they're called running pliers. I got them. They're much easier to break long pieces of glass with these. They have this line. I actually drew this line to be so you could see it a little better. The original line was kind of not really there. And basically these go in like that. And when you squeeze, they put pressure on the glass this way. So if wherever your score mark is at, the glass has no choice but to break downward due to how that curve is there and then the pressure is being applied. So real quickly, let me just kind of show you how to do that. So here's my scoring tool. Again, people tend to say to use it this way. So to score like that. I score like this, but you know, however you can get it to score, just go that route. But real quickly, let me just do it on this piece here. So there's a score mark right there. I don't know if it'll focus. I don't know how well you can see it, but it's right there. So we're just gonna take this and line up the black mark next to the score mark. And then we're gonna squeeze slightly. And then there's your cut. If you were to take, let's say we made a pattern. So, like, well, I don't know if I went all the way through. Let's hope it breaks. But you can also do it like this. I don't think that's gonna break. I didn't get to the end. Let's try to use the pliers real quick. So as long as your angles aren't like extremely sharp, you'll be able to get, you know, pretty good bends on the glass and everything like that. I'm handling the glass barehanded. I know I should probably be wearing gloves. If I cut myself, they're my fingers. If you cut yourself, they're your fingers. So I recommend you definitely don't do what I'm doing and wear gloves. But that's how the glass is cut. And so I'm hopefully gonna be able to salvage a little something from this for other projects that I'm working on. I'm moving on to the bottom piece, well, the back piece. This, I've gone ahead and cut the board that I had that I'm gonna use for the backing. And so essentially, you might see this upside down, but this is gonna go like that. And then that piece there will go on top up here, and it'll be the door. I also have the hinges somewhere, but right now my main concern is I'm trying to figure out how to stick this piece onto here, what nails to use. I know I'm gonna use some wood glue to keep this on there, and then after the glue is dried, then I'll put nails through. I'm gonna have to I'll probably end up doing like 16 gauge nails, and then probably like 4 down the long pieces and 1 on each corner. And then here on the back side, it's going to take the screws to do so it can be hung. So I'll put 2 screws and then the hanger part down there. So I'm not too concerned about like this general area. It's more so like the longer area down there. For this piece over here, I've had this laying around for a little while. I'm actually just gonna use it. It actually gets pretty close to the color, and it's a combination between brown and black. I was very indecisive of what color to use. So this is the stuff that I'm going to use to silicone the glass on there. And then I've also got these hinges. These are the hinges that I'm going to use on this. Let me see if I can't open them. so I can kind of show you what they look like. So they are like this. So I'm just gonna screw it in like this, and then this will go onto the back of this piece. So this will sit something like that. And that way, when it goes to open, you go like that, and it does a 180, so then it opens up. I need to tape off everything, so that way when I apply silicone, it only goes into the spots that I want it to go on. I don't want the silicone to come up onto the wood. By taping it off, that should help. So I'm going to be taping all of these ends here, and then I'm gonna flip it, and the inside part, I'll be taping this off, like I guess, I don't know, this border or whatnot. And I'll also be taping off the glass. So I'll be following the glass as so, like basically to the same line that I would see the wood kind of showing. This is why I still have it upside down. And then I'll have to probably use a razor blade, because I want these, essentially what I'm going for is when I apply the silicone here, I want to have a clean line of silicone on top. So on this part that you see, I want it to be inside the glass, like underneath where the wood is at, but I also want a small thin line going here. And so I'll have to take a razor blade and cut the corners off, so I follow that same pattern, meaning I need to come like this as well. Let me see if I can get it to line up. So I'll need to cut this angle right here, and then I'll need to do the same thing. And so essentially it's all going to be taped off before I apply the silicone. This is what I'm aiming for right here. Again, I just want the silicone to end up right in here, and the tape will separate that. That way when I peel the tape off, it'll leave a clean line of where the silicone's at on the top part of the glass, but also on the bottom side. So I just need to flip this over and then tape this in the same manner. Because I've taped the top of the glass, I already have that line of what I need to follow on the inside part. And then obviously, as I mentioned before, just down at this this border that's underneath the glass, I just need to follow that with tape. So I've got this piece of wood, which is the same width as the one under here. I'm going to just kind of line it up on the edges before I put a nail down, because I want to make sure that I'm getting as close to the center of the wood as possible. I'm using super thin nails. Let me see if I can find them. I'm using these, which are the ones that are shoved through with my nail gun, or staple gun. So it's not going to really split the wood unless I kind of get too far that way or come too far this way and I go at an angle somehow. But just to be safe, I prefer to do it this way. And I'm sure you get the idea. I've gone ahead and I've marked the holes of where I'm going to be placing this part of the hinge. It was pretty simple. I just lined it up like this and then took the marker and I just made the 3 dots there. So before I make these 2 dots down here though, and actually drill them, I'm gonna be doing a lot of back and forth, or like flipping it back and forth, just to make sure it's really lined up. Because the last thing I want to do is drill these holes in here and then have it be off, and that would just be terrible. So a couple of things I can do is I can measure off the sides here and measure over there, and then do it on the opposite side too to make sure that this is centered. That's one way to do it. But I'll also still just be flipping it over so I can make sure that it looks centered from the side that it will always be visible. I'm gonna be using these drill bits right here. So I'm not sure how well you can see. Fairly small one. This will be for the body of the screw to go in. I've gotten it smaller than obviously the wedge part of the screw. And then this one, I'm only gonna be using this one to go in just about like a couple of millimeters in, because these screws, I don't know how well you can see, but they flare out. And so I don't want the flaring out part to cause problems on the wood. Granted, this hinge is fairly thick, but still, I'm not taking any chances. So I'll do this, I'll do the body, or this hole probably about that deep. And then this one will just be the very top part. So I can just have the clearance for where the screws wedge open. And then the other thing I gotta figure out is how I'm gonna keep this closed, because I'm thinking of doing magnets, because I was thinking of a latch, but because it's going to be, the way this is set up, you don't really see this part. And so you kind of would have to know that there's a latch back there. Granted, it is my piece. I'm gonna be the only one opening it, but it might be smart to just do magnets. And so I gotta figure out the latch part or how to keep it closed. I'll figure that out hopefully as I'm screwing this in. It'll come to me as what to do over there. You always want to preset your holes. And so now, that's how it works right there. I believe that's as much as it'll open, but it's still more than sufficient for me. Maybe I can show you kind of what the hinges end up looking like. It's a much heavier piece now with both of pieces on it, but that's kind of the hinges there. I'm going to take it back apart. I only need the top piece off, so I'll be unscrewing the top piece so I can just silicone the glass on, and it should be done. I might just do a little bit more sanding, just detail sanding here, and then I gotta wipe off the wood because you can kind of see like marks and everything on there. And it's also pretty dusty still from the sanding. I went ahead and I stuck these magnets on. I didn't think about it. I did the opposite thing on the other side. I didn't really think about it, and I should have routed the crevice in there and put them in. However, for whatever reason, maybe I was in a rush, I don't know. It didn't come to me until this morning. So I'm not the most upset about it because it is in the back. You can't really see them. And here, let me show you kind of how they sit. So essentially that's kind of how the piece sits on there, and right now is magnetized. It's those magnets are fairly strong. The box said that they were 5 pounds. So I'm going off of what the box said. And you can definitely feel it. They are fairly strong. So I'm confident that they'll hold it shut fairly well. The next thing that I gotta do though, is I gotta seal get the glass sealed on. So I'm gonna fill it in with silicone. Then I'm gonna flip it, get the tape off while the silicone's still wet, because I need I don't know how easy it would be to remove the tape if silicone gets on it and it dries. So I'll put silicone on the bottom, put the glass on, I'll put tape to hold the glass in place, flip it over, and then remove the tape on the bottom part off, flip it back, and then put silicone on the top, and then last remove this piece of tape and then just let it sit there until it dries. Once that dries, then the whole piece is done. So that's kind of my next step here. The silicone was giving me some issues, but the tube, but we seem to be good now. just lay the glass on top. Okay, let's see what happens. The silicone didn't come up as much, so I'm going to, and over here as well. So we're going to put a piece of tape there. Put tape here. And just in case, I'm going to also grab I actually have a styrofoam lid from a container that I had before. I'm going to put the styrofoam lid on the floor and flip this on it. And I think that should be plenty. So as you can see, the silicone seeped out on some of the edges, and I would think that would be extremely difficult to remove if the silicone dried. So that's why I'm removing the tape right now, so that I can make sure that I don't have problems trying to remove this later on. I've gone ahead and flipped it over. I'm gonna take a squeegee, but I'm showing you with a sharp piece of glass that could definitely cut my fingers off. But this is just for demonstration purposes. I'm gonna take a squeegee and go like this, and as I go through, it's going to end up leaving a clean silicone line. I'll have to remove the silicone off of the squeegee constantly, and then make another pass, and then as I do that, then I'll end up with this clean pass down here, like kind of like that. So in the end, what you're kind of looking for is this like clean spread. Okay, so I believe that's as good as it's gonna get. So the next thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove the tape right now before it starts setting. And then if I'm not happy with it, I can always tape it back up and make another pass. But I'm fairly confident it's gonna be okay, at least in the areas that matter. So I'm gonna go ahead and rip the tape off right now, and then and see what it looks like once it's all finished, once all the tape's off. And there it is, once the tape is all removed, the line that I was kind of going for. Finally something that turned out like I envisioned it. I guess I just gotta wait for the silicone to dry, and it should be good. On a couple of spots, the tape did kind of throw the silicone up, lift it up. And so I just need to go in and maybe with a razor blade, just clean it up, but I'm very happy with how it turned out. I didn't get silicone everywhere, and so I'm content. Once this dries, it's just a matter of putting it all back together, and the piece is finally done. And so here it is, all assembled now. Let me see if I can prop it open real quick. Oopsies. Those magnets are pretty tight.